chapter 11. And it came to pass, when Jabin, king of Hazor, heard thereof, that he sent to Jobab, king of Madon, and to king of Shimron, and to the king of Achshaph, and to the kings that were on the north, in the hill country, and in the Arabah, south of Chinneroth, and in the lowland, and in the regions of Dor on the west, to the Canaanite on the east and on the west, to the Amorite, and to the Hittite, to the Perizzite, and to the Jebusite in the hill country, and to the Hivite under Hermon in the land of Mizpah. And they went out, they and all their host with them, much people, even as the sand that is upon the seashore in a multitude, with horses and chariots very many. And all these kings met together, and they came, and they pitched together at the waters of Merom, to fight with Israel. And the Lord said unto Joshua, Be not afraid because of them, for tomorrow at this time will I deliver them up all slain before Israel. You shall hew their horses, and burn their chariots with fire. So Joshua came, and all the people of war with him against them by the waters of Merom, suddenly, and fell upon them. And the Lord delivered them into the hand of Israel, and they smote them, and chased them unto great Zidon, and unto Misropheth Maim, and unto the valley of Mizpah eastward, and they smote them until they left them none remaining. And Joshua did unto them as the Lord bade him, and he hewed their horses, and burnt their chariots with fire. And Joshua turned back at that time, and took Hazor, and smote the king thereof with the sword, for Hazor beforetime was the head of all those kingdoms. And they smote all the souls that were therein with the edge of the sword, utterly destroying them. There was none left that breathed. And he burnt Hazor with fire. And all the cities of those kings, and all the kings of them, did Joshua take. And he smote them with the edge of the sword, and utterly destroyed them, as Moses the servant of the Lord commanded. But as for the cities that stood on their mounds, Israel burned none of them, save Hazor only. That did Joshua burn. And all the spoil of those cities, and the cattle, the children of Israel took for prey unto themselves. But every man they smote with the edge of the sword, until they had destroyed them, neither left they any that breathed. As the Lord commanded Moses his servant, so did Moses command Joshua, and so did Joshua. He left nothing undone of all that the Lord commanded Moses. So Joshua took all the land, the hill country, and all the south, and all the land of Goshen, and the lowland, and the Arabah, and the hill country of Israel, and the lowland of the same, from the bare mountain that goeth up to Seir, even unto Baal-gad, in the valley of Lebanon, under Mount Hermon. And all their kings he took, and he smote them, and put them to death. Joshua made war a long time with all those kings. There was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel, save the Hivites, the inhabitants of Gibeon. They took all in battle. For it was of the Lord to harden their hearts to come against Israel in battle, that they might be utterly destroyed, that they might have no favor, but that they might be destroyed, as the Lord commanded Moses. And Joshua came at that time, and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, and from the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua utterly destroyed them with their cities. There was none of the Anakim left in the land, the children of Israel. Only in Gaza, in Gath, in Ashdod did some remain. So Joshua took the whole land, according to all that the Lord spoke unto Moses. And Joshua gave it for an inheritance unto Israel, according to their divisions by their tribes. And the land had rest from war. All right, let's go back to verse 1. And it came to pass, when Jabin, the king of Hazor, heard thereof, that he sent to Jobab, the king of Madon, and to the king of Shimron, and to the king of Achshaph. And Jabin means whom God observes, and Hazor is castle. Jobab means a desert, and Madon is strife. Shimron means a watch place or of height, and the king of Achshaph, I shall be bewitched, or a place of witches, of sorcery. Now, these few kings here, or these kings, they're going to gather up a lot of nations, as we're getting ready to find out. In verse 2, and the kings that were on the north, in the hill country, and in the Arabah south of Chinneroth, and in the lowland, in the regions of Dor, to the west. And Chinneroth was one of the nations of Gibeon, one of the 4 cities of Gibeon. 3, to the Canaanite on the east and on the west, to the Amorite, to the Hittite, the Perizzite, and to the Jebusite in the hill country, and to the Hivite under Hermon in the land of Mizpah. And this Hivites here does not include Gibeon. So we see that he's gathering all these nations, even all these 6 nations that they're going to destroy. There were 7 nations that they was to destroy. And here we're naming the 6 of them. 4, and they went out, they and all their host with them, much people, even as the sand that is upon the seashore in multitude, with horses and chariots very many. So we find out this is in a similitude, this is in symbology of all the armies of all the nations who gather in the end time to come against Israel, the people of the covenant, all the children of the covenant, the everlasting covenant of God, even these 10 teachings of God, this covenant he's made, if you will obey. And they've gathered themselves to fight against the children of Israel. 5, and all these kings met together, and they came and pitched together at the waters of Merom to fight with Israel. So they have decided that this would be a meeting place where they would meet. And Merom means a high place. So they're meeting at the waters of the high place. And waters is always in reference to truths, words, teachings. And here we find that they're meeting at the place, the high place of teachings, so to speak. And the Lord said to Joshua, verse 6, be not afraid because of them, for tomorrow at this time will I deliver them up, all slain before Israel. You shall hew their horses and burn their chariots with fire. And basically what this is in symbology of the destroying war from off the earth. He's going to hew their horses and burn their chariots with fire. These are their war machines at that time. These horses they used for battle, and the chariots they would use to fight with. 7. So Joshua came, and all the people of war with him, against them by the waters of Merom, suddenly, and fell upon them. Joshua got all his army together, all the men of war. This time Joshua gets together, and he brings them down to battle against them at this place of Merom, these waters of Merom. And he does a surprise attack on them here. He comes up on them suddenly. They wasn't expecting them there as that quickly, but they fell on them suddenly, a surprise attack. Verse 8, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of Israel, and they smote them, and chased them unto great Zidon, and unto Mishrephoth-Maim, or Meam, and unto the valley of Mizpah eastward, and they smote them until they left none remaining. And Zidon is, what it means is hunting, in the sense of catching a fish. And catching a fish is a symbology of catching souls or hunting souls of men. See? And Mishrephoth-Maim is the place, and what that means is burning waters, waters that burn, and the valley of Mizpah. And Mizpah means a watchtower, or a place where you would watch out. And they smote them until there left none remaining. Verse 9, and Joshua did unto them as the Lord bade him. Or he hewed their horses and burnt their chariots with fire. And here, this bade means as the Lord commanded, as the Lord told him. He hewed their horses and burnt their chariots with fire. And what this is a symbology of, Joshua is destroying their war machines. Joshua is doing away with their war, their ability to make war against Israel. Verse 10, And Joshua turned back at that time, and he took Hazor, and he smote the king thereof with the sword. For Hazor before time was the head of all these kingdoms, all those kingdoms. And Hazor means castle. And we'll remember the king of that was Jabin, whom God observes. So, and this was the head of all these nations he's trying to gather up. Jabin being kind of like the head of all these nations. He gathered them together at the waters of Merom, and there Joshua destroyed all of them. In verse 12, and all the cities of those kings, and all the kings of them, did Joshua take, and he smote them with the edge of the sword, and utterly destroyed them, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded. And we remember in Deuteronomy, this is exactly what Moses commanded, that he would take these kings and destroy them. Remember, they had the covenant, they knew the truth, and they turned from the truth and started practicing idolatry, witchcrafts, hunting the souls of men, which God created the souls of men, and it ain't up to men to hunt these souls to deliver them unto death, for that's all a man can do. Man cannot save your soul. God alone saves. God alone is salvation. There is none other. He shall not give his glory to another. We'll find this written by the prophets later on. Verse 12, and all the cities of those kings, and all the kings of them, did Joshua take. 13, but as for the cities that stood on their mounds, Israel burned none of them, save Hazor only, that did Joshua burn. And we'll find that Joshua didn't tear down all these cities, that he destroy all these cities, because God had promised the children that they would inhabit cities already built. But we find that Hazor, their castle, their royal city, Joshua did burn. And all spoil of these cities, and the cattle, the children of Israel took for a prey unto themselves. But every man they smote with the edge of the sword, until they had destroyed them. Neither left they any that breathed. And this is exactly according to the word of God, the word that, as we find out in verse 15, as the Lord commanded Moses his servant, so did Moses command Joshua, and so did Joshua. He left nothing undone of all the Lord commanded Moses. So we find out Joshua was trying to obey the word exactly as Moses commanded him. Even though they've made a little deal with Gibeon, we're going to look past that right now at this moment, and we're going to go on. Joshua, verse 16, took all that land, the hill country, and all the south, all the land of Goshen, and the lowland, and the Arabah, and the hill country of Israel, and the lowland of the same. These would be the plains around the hill country that would later become Ephraim and Manasseh. These hill countries just south of Lebanon, where the great forests were. These plains around Jericho, the Arabah, which is the plains down below the Salt Sea. Joshua took all these lands, and all these nations did he conquer. 17, from the bare mountain that goeth up to Seir, even to Bel-Gad in the valley of Lebanon, under Mount Hermon. And all their kings he took, and he smote them, and he put them to death. And the bare mountain is Ebal. That's what Ebal means, a bare rock. And Bel-Gad means the Lord of Fortune, because Bel was one of their gods they fell and worshipped, and they refer to him as Lord. Well, Bel is not a god. Gad meaning fortune. And that probably is not a good translation of the Lord of Fortune. But, the not a god of fortune would probably be the better translation thereof. And he destroys them and destroys their places. 18, Joshua made war a long time with all those kings. And it did. It took a while for Joshua to defeat all these nations and drive them completely out. We're talking about 6 nations here he has to finish driving out. Last chapter, he conquered the 5 kings of the Amorites, but there was a few Amorites remaining. Verse 19, there was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel, save the Hivites, the inhabitants of Gibeon. They took all in battle. And if we'll remember, Joshua wasn't commanded to offer these nations here any treaty of peace, as he was to later on, after he conquers these 7 nations. He was to offer the other inhabitants of lands that God would give them up. He was to offer them peace before he went in and took the city. But these nations he wasn't supposed to offer peace in the first place. 20. For it was of the Lord to harden their hearts to come against Israel in battle, that they might be utterly destroyed, that they might have no favor, but that they might be destroyed, as the Lord commanded Moses. And we're going to find out that this has a significant meaning of the end time, where God hardens all these other nations' hearts against the truth, for one reason, that he might utterly destroy them from off the face of the earth. Them and their not a gods, them and their understandings, their false teachings, these burning waters that they teach by, causing people to die, those that hunt souls. Woe to him that hunts souls of men. These souls don't belong to you, they belong to God. Where men should have been teaching the truth, this would have never happened. Remember, these are all descendants of Noah. They knew the truth. They had the truth. But they took the truth and they had perverted it, using it to hunt souls of men and to gain to themselves wealth. 21. And Joshua came at that time and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, from the hill country of Judah, and from the hill country of Israel. Joshua utterly destroyed them with their cities. And the Anakim would be the children of Anak, and they're giants. They're called by several different names in the book, but these are the descendants of the Nephilim, the fallen ones that are mentioned in the book of Genesis, where the sons of God came down, and they did see the daughters of men, and they took as many as they wanted to wife, and in those days were giants born. These are the giants we're talking about, these Anakim, the children of the fallen ones, these that have made themselves great in the land. And we find here that Debir means the sanctuary, and Anab, the fruit, and Hebron, the association. So Joshua destroys these. These translations of these names have a small understanding that can be placed within them. Those associated with the sanctuary and the fruit thereof. This sanctuary, this word Debir, the sanctuary, means the innermost chamber of the sanctuary. So they've took and they've tried to take over this innermost place of God. The true teachings and understandings that come from God, they've stifled them off there. And this is what caused their downfall. And God did harden their hearts that they might be destroyed. Verse 22. There was none of the Anakim left in the land of the children of Israel. Only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod did some remain. Well, the first part of this statement is almost true. Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod being part of the land that God gave children of Israel. So there were giants left in the land of the children of Israel, in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. And Ashdod means powerful. Gath is the wine press, and Gaza the strong. 20. So Joshua took the whole land, according to all that the Lord spoke unto Moses, and Joshua gave it for an inheritance unto Israel, according to the divisions of their tribes, and the land had rest from war. And we see here, this is where the land is now going to be divided up, because the wars are over. Joshua has destroyed most everybody belonging to these nations. And we're going to find out here just a little bit later that Israel made a deal with Gibeon. Don't think they didn't get unpunished for this. They chose to put a little burr in their saddle, chose to leave a thorn. And we're going to find out that this thorn turns into a thorn bush. And here in just a little while, we're going to learn this as we go through the book, that this thorn bush is going to create a problem in the future for Israel. They would have been better off if they would have not made a deal, but they've made the deal, and this is for us, so we can see this and learn by it. God trying to teach us a greater understanding here, that we have to utterly destroy these false teachings out of the world. We have to utterly make an end of it all, once and for all, that it cannot never rise again. The 10 teachings of God himself, these 10 commandments, is all that we have. This is the light we go by. This is our understanding. This is our knowledge. This is our wisdom. We go by this. We don't go by the teachings of men that teach whatever they teach, these untruths. These teach they hunt the souls of men whereby they can make gain for themselves. We go by the commandments. We go by the true understanding that God wanted us to have. All right, we're going to go on. We're going to go to chapter 12.